it is true that the kind of government bashing that we've seen over the last few years, whether it is from the opposition or it is from the social media sites and citizens talking about it, or even corporate leaders, has been unprecedented. Many would just say that complete inaction on part of the government has led just about everyone to criticize it, and also now several allegations of corruption, one scam after the other, that seems to be coming up. You know the Prime Minister personally, you've always termed him as one of the most honest people you've known. Is it an irony really that he's facing the kind of charges and is being asked by the opposition to step down?
I think there are a set of circumstances which have put him in that position. I fully sympathize. That's not to mean that progress cannot take place. There are lots of areas where progress can take place without involvement of any legislation. Sure. For example, it has been more than 14 months since I submitted a set of suggestions to Mr. Pranab Mukherjee.
Right, I remember.
For removing some of the bottlenecks in our industry. And I met Mr. Pranab Mukherjee 4 times. I met the Prime Minister twice. I met the Finance Secretary. I met Dr. Kaushik Basu, the Chief Economic Advisor, 3 times, all of that. I mean, just defining what is software export, just making sure that the growth of the industry is not curtailed by unnecessary clauses in the tax administration. That should not happen. This has nothing to do with the parliament. This has nothing to do with any opposition party, please. So let us be very, very clear. While we will fully sympathize with the UPA government on issues that have in some way immobilized them because of what is happening in the parliament, there are many, many other areas which depend purely on how quickly bureaucrats take decisions. You know, I spoke to Mr. Pranab Mukherjee on 22nd of June, and he was very kind. He is a very, extremely decent person, extremely courteous, and he said, look, I will talk to my finance secretary before I leave on 26th of June, when he was resigning on 26th of June. But I have not heard anything. Of course, the Prime Minister has appointed yet another committee, Rangachari committee. I don't think you need more and more committees to solve these things. These are all straightforward problems. These are all problems on which the bureaucrats can take their decision. So therefore, while I have tremendous respect and admiration for Dr. Manmohan Singh, but we must at the same time remember that unless we create a sense of urgency in our bureaucratic decisions, we will not be able to make progress. Second, let me tell you, at state level, there are states where our plans for building new development centers have not been approved for 5 years.
Right. Right.
What is the result? The result is we cannot create jobs in those places.
West Bengal
who is suffering? The young people are suffering. Right. This has nothing to do with any political party, nothing to do with opposition, none of that. Therefore, I think we have to be very, very clear as to what aspect of our progress is delayed because of the confrontation between the opposition and the ruling party, and what aspects of our progress is delayed by our bureaucracy. So we have to be very clear.
And that's the kind of disappointment that you're expressing. You're saying it's been over a year, you've met just about everybody in the government who matters, and things haven't moved. Now, nothing explains that really.
No, but remember, this industry is supposed to form approximately 22 to 25% of our total exports. Right. 22 to 25%, and it has a net value addition in hard currency of something like 40 to 50%. Now, I can't understand how when there is an industry that contributes 25% of the foreign of exports, and an industry where there is 40 to 50% of net value addition, how its problems are not seen as urgent, how its problems are not seen as something that we all should solve by 5 p.m. this evening.
And that's the kind of urgency that is needed and is clearly lacking. In that sense, what would be your advice to the Prime Minister? He's a close friend. What would you like to tell him? Because very often we've heard coalition dharma, we've heard global downturn, but what you're really saying is what's holding up growth is pure lack of decision making.
No, I am not even going into the coalition dharma aspect of it. I think Dr. Montek Singh is a very wise man, he's an honest man, decent man. So therefore, I am nobody to advise him. All that I am requesting him is, there are decisions that do not require any legislation. There are decisions that will not depend on the global financial crisis. Right. And these decisions will help India become better. Therefore, please encourage your bureaucrats and your ministers to take quick decisions. That's all what I am requesting him, nothing else.
We're already talking about growth slipping to 5% levels for India. This was an economy that was not so long ago talking about double-digit growth. How badly do you think our terrible growth has impacted our overall image on the global platform?
Well, you know, I keep meeting lots of corporate leaders outside India. I spend a lot of my time every month. About 6-7 years ago, if India was mentioned, if China was mentioned 3 times, India would be mentioned once. Today, China is mentioned 30 times, India is not mentioned even once. Really? That in some sense tells the whole story. There is nothing more that I need to add. That means we have cut our own legs off by our inaction, by our policies, all of that.
Many have actually just written off 2012-13, this financial year, in terms of any sort of revival. We're already talking about terrible growth numbers. So you're saying growth will only pick up after a few months. Do you see any strong reforms actually kicking off, given the kind of political opposition we continue to see? Where exactly is the optimism emerging from?
No, I think even before you get to any reforms, which may require legislation, you know, there are reforms that can be done as an ordinance or an executive order or whatever it is. But let's assume that major reforms require legislation. Therefore, it may be difficult. All that I am saying is, let us quicken the pace of decision making in areas which do not require legislation.
Right.
Let us
political consensus building.
Absolutely. Right. Let us first create a sense of urgency in our execution. Let us create a sense of optimism in our execution. Let us create a sense of euphoria that we Indians can do things fast. That's all what I'm saying. It doesn't require any legislation. It doesn't require parliament, none of that.
But this time the slowdown has been persistent, and what many people fear is that actually the situation on the ground may be even worse than what we're imagining. Already we've seen a huge downgrade in terms of growth forecast. The Reserve Bank also now talking about 6.5% growth. But if things don't move quickly, are there fears that we could slip even below 6.5%?
I think what we need to really look at is what is slowing down growth, and rather than just say growth is going down. I would think that at the top of our mind should be inflation, and rightly so. The Reserve Bank says that that's worry number one, and because inflation is not tending down, you keep interest rates high. I think that hypothesis, I think we now need to question whether it is the only tool that we have to fight inflation. Right. I'm not saying inflation is not something that we should fight, but how do we fight inflation, I think, is something that we need to keep in mind, because we have been trying to hold interest rates fairly high for a number of years now.
And that hasn't helped the inflation situation.
That has not helped in a situation where globally every other country has eased interest rates and is trying a different strategy. I think what we need to do, possibly in our context, is try to see if there is another medicine that is available. or put it another way, try to see if we can play with interest rates to see whether growth gets stimulated.
Absolutely.
Because in India, you always have control on interest rates. You can always jack up interest rates if you want.
Right.
If you find the medicine doesn't work, you can jack up interest rates. But I would say that at this point in time, what you need to do is try to see if bringing interest rates down with that ability to jack up if necessary, you need to see whether this stimulates growth.
What's really ailing the Indian economy right now? Because it's not clearly some of those political compulsions, the coalition dharma that the government often talks about, or the global uncertainties. Some of the issues are very basic, like some of the bottlenecks that are being faced with regard to infrastructure projects, resolving some issues like land acquisition, ensuring that at least projects go on stream. Do you think the government should now really focus on these things rather than the kind of reforms that we keep talking about that will once again bring in the political opposition, once again put the government in a bind on whether to go forward?
I entirely agree. I think we should work on the reform agenda in parallel, but the reform agenda in terms of mass, big ticket reforms is not what is holding us up today.
Right.
What is holding up us today is on the consumer side, his ability to afford what he wants, and their interest rate is the biggest challenge he has got.
Right.
And that's very simple. As far as the investment engine is concerned, whether it is in manufacturing, infrastructure, et al. That we talked of, there the issues, as I said, are not only interest. Interest is probably low down on the chart there. What is at the top there is land clearances, environmental clearances, the comfort that you have that I could do business given the clearances that I have. So if somebody were to say that, well, I reasonably expect clearances and I can start planning, placing orders and things like that, that's what used to happen. But now, if you are not sure that those clearances are going to come forth, you are not going to.
Hold back your investment.
There are a few more things. I think mineral rights, pricing of government owned mineral and or airwave rights, and we have seen the sort of challenges. I think there has to be clarity in all these things, or confidence building industry that these will be handled in a particular manner. I think this is what is required to boost that investment that is required in infrastructure and in manufacturing. Luckily for us, in the past, each of these projects took a very, very long to implement. A manufacturing project probably 3 to 4 years, an infrastructure project, whatever type it was, 5 to 7 years. We are now talking of implementation cycles for manufacturing projects, very short. We are running probably 12 to 18 months, and for infrastructure projects, probably around 24 to 36 months or so. So we can actually accelerate things pretty quickly. And we started talking of the mood. This, all this constitutes mood. And all this, if we can start addressing, mood starts getting elevated, and that's what we need to see. It is not as if the animal spirits have been slaughtered. The animal spirits are still there, and they will revive very quickly. Once you start and the business sees that this exercise of starting to create an environment where you can invest predictably and proceed is back on the ground.
It's interesting you say that, because the Prime Minister also talked about reviving the animal spirit, and while we've seen a lot of talk really happen, what is it that the government should do almost immediately to change that sentiment, to uplift that mood? Because what you're saying is perhaps something which is needed right now, that at least we need that mood changer, the game changer really here on.
Yeah, I don't think that there is something that you can turn on and off. For example, I saw mood change, even to some extent, when they said that the GAR would be revisited, and there would be clarity on that. There was immediate mood change. I think the key mood change medicine that we or the government has got is to provide clarity. So it is not big ticket reforms, it is clarity on, say, pick 10 items where industry believes there is no clarity.
And what would those items be?
If you need to, I would say that call industry and talk to them as to what are the 10 items that you need clarity on. We will not give you any concessions, we will not change any extent policy, but we will give you clarity so that you can continue to do business without rethinking about it. Let them put it on the table and let them go ahead. I would think that you need clarity on land, on the land side, on the environment side,
taxation side.
On the tax side, I think would be the three headline issues. And I don't think anybody is talking of any concessions here. If extant rules should not be bent, and let me make it very clear when I say clarity, extant rules should not be bent, but we need to articulate how they would be implemented and what is the way that we could proceed with our business with, and that's what is required.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app, fully optimized for retina display, full screen view, faster response time, and Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.